When a routine traffic stop turns into a career-defining moment, a police officer's worst assumptions collide with a truth he never saw coming. His target is the man who holds his future in his hands. The sun was starting its descent over the streets of Sacramento, painting the sky with streaks of gold and amber. Marcus Greene was on his way home after a long day at the office. His sedan hummed softly as he adjusted the air conditioning, eager to shake off the day's stress. The radio played faintly in the background, a soothing antidote to the bustling city streets. He approached a yellow light, slowing down just as it turned red. That's when the blue and red lights erupted behind him, accompanied by the sharp blare of a police siren. Marcus glanced in his rearview mirror, his brows furrowing slightly. He pulled over to the side of the road, rolling down his window as a police cruiser parked behind him. Out stepped Officer Derek Vaughn, mid-30s with a buzz cut and a badge gleaming on his chest. Vaughn adjusted his belt as he swaggered toward Marcus's car, exuding the confidence of someone used to being in control. "License and registration," Vaughn said curtly, his voice flat but laced with a hint of authority. Marcus complied without a word, reaching into his glove compartment for his registration and handing over his driver's license. His movements were deliberate and calm, but he could feel Vaughn's gaze scrutinizing him, as if searching for a reason to dig deeper. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Vaughn asked, leaning closer to the window. "I'm not entirely sure," Marcus replied evenly, his tone polite but firm. "You didn't come to a full stop at the light?" Vaughn said, though there was a flicker of hesitation in his voice. Marcus frowned but nodded slightly. "I see. I thought I slowed down in time, but I understand." Vaughn didn't respond immediately. Instead, he lingered, his eyes narrowing as he studied Marcus more closely. It wasn't just a routine stop anymore, at least not for Vaughn. His posture shifted subtly but noticeably, as if he had already decided this was more than a minor infraction. The officer glanced at the license in his hand. "You're not from around here, are you?" he asked. Marcus hesitated for a fraction of a second before replying, "I moved here a few months ago. My address is on the license." But Vaughn wasn't really listening. His questions were starting to take on an edge, just enough to suggest that he wasn't concerned about a traffic violation anymore. Marcus's calm demeanor seemed to irk him, and he leaned in closer. "Where were you headed in such a hurry?" "Just going home," Marcus replied, his tone remaining steady. But the subtle shift in the air was impossible to ignore. Vaughn didn't just see Marcus as a driver anymore. He saw something else, something that warranted suspicion. Marcus could sense the tension building, but he didn't flinch. Little did Officer Vaughn know, the calm exterior wasn't naivety. It was control. This was just the beginning. Vaughn took a step back, folding Marcus's documents with an exaggerated slowness before tucking them into his chest pocket. He straightened up, his expression shifting into something faintly smug, as though he'd already made up his mind about the man sitting in front of him. "Step out of the car for me," Vaughn ordered. Marcus's grip on the steering wheel tightened briefly, but his face betrayed no reaction. "Is there a specific reason for that, officer?" he asked, his tone measured. Vaughn's lips twitched, but he masked it quickly. "I asked you to step out of the car. You don't want to make this harder than it has to be." The threat hung in the air, unspoken yet unmistakable. Marcus exhaled slowly and opened the door. As he stepped out, Vaughn's eyes flicked over him, sizing him up. Marcus stood a little taller than the officer, his shoulders broad but his demeanor unthreatening. His tailored suit suggested professionalism. His polished shoes hinted at someone meticulous and careful. Yet none of that seemed to matter. Vaughn gestured toward the front of the car. "Hands where I can see them." Marcus complied, his movements calm and deliberate. "Is there something specific you're looking for?" Vaughn smirked faintly. "Just routine. We've had some incidents around here. You can never be too careful." Marcus turned his head slightly, locking eyes with Vaughn. "Incidents involving men in business suits driving sedans? Or does this have more to do with something else?" The question landed like a punch, and for a moment Vaughn's composure faltered. He straightened up, his hand drifting toward his belt. more reflex than necessity. "Watch your tone," he said, his voice hardening. "I'm simply asking a question," Marcus replied. There was no defiance in his voice, just a quiet firmness that seemed to unsettle the officer. Vaughn leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. "You seem awfully familiar with how this works. You got something to hide?" Marcus let the silence stretch for a beat before answering. "No, officer. I just believe in being clear about the reasons for an interaction like this. Transparency, you know." Vaughn scoffed but didn't reply. He stepped back, pacing a small circle in front of the car. The dynamic was shifting in ways he couldn't quite grasp. Marcus wasn't reacting the way most people would. There was no fear, no stammering, no nervous fidgeting. Instead, there was control, poise, and an unsettling calm that put Vaughn on edge. "You seem pretty confident," Vaughn muttered almost to himself. "Like you think you know what's going to happen next." Marcus didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he tilted his head slightly. "Confidence isn't the issue here, officer. Respect is." Vaughn froze for half a second before turning back to face him. The smugness was gone now, replaced by something sharper, almost defensive. He opened his mouth to reply, but the words didn't come out. Marcus's composure was throwing him off balance, and he didn't like it. Vaughn tapped his fingers against the holster on his belt, his frustration barely concealed. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone who looked like Marcus. His gaze flicked back to the sedan, as though searching for a justification he hadn't yet manufactured. "Turn around and place your hands on the hood," Vaughn said, his voice clipped. "I need to check for weapons." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Weapons," he repeated, his tone incredulous, but still measured. "Do I look like someone who's carrying a weapon?" Vaughn's jaw tightened, and for a moment his composure cracked. "I'm not going to ask you again." Marcus hesitated, a flicker of something unreadable passing across his face. Then, without a word, he turned and placed his palms flat against the hood of his car. Vaughn approached, the crunch of his boots on the asphalt breaking the uneasy silence. The officer patted Marcus down in quick, rough movements, his hands lingering a little longer than necessary. It wasn't just a search. It was an attempt to assert dominance, to provoke a reaction. But Marcus didn't flinch, didn't stiffen, didn't so much as shift under the invasive scrutiny. "You're clean," Vaughn muttered, stepping back. The admission sounded begrudging, like he was irritated that he hadn't found anything to justify his suspicion. Marcus turned to face him, his expression calm but his eyes sharp. "Of course I am," he said simply. "Now, officer, if you're done—" "I'm not done," Vaughn interrupted, his voice rising slightly. The words tumbled out too quickly, betraying his need to stay in control. "You seem to know a lot about what I can and can't do. Care to explain why?" Marcus folded his arms, his posture relaxed despite the tension crackling between them. "I've had my fair share of interactions with law enforcement," he said. "Let's just say I've learned a lot over the years." Vaughn's eyes narrowed. "So, you a lawyer or something?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Or something." The ambiguity in his answer seemed to irritate Vaughn further. He stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space, his voice dropping to a near growl. "Listen, you think you're smarter than me? Think you can talk your way out of this?" Marcus met his gaze evenly, unflinching. "I don't think anything, officer. I just believe in fairness. And so far, I'm not seeing much of it here." The words hung in the air like a challenge, and Vaughn took the bait. "Fairness?" he spat. "You think fairness is what this is about? People like you always—" He stopped himself abruptly, the words lingering like smoke even though they hadn't fully escaped. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something about his posture shifted, a subtle but unmistakable signal that he'd caught exactly what Vaughn had left unsaid. "People like me?" Marcus repeated, his voice soft but charged with meaning. Vaughn bristled, stepping back as if realizing he'd just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. "You know what I mean," he muttered, though his tone lacked the conviction it had moments earlier. "I think I do," Marcus replied quietly. His calmness wasn't passive anymore. It was razor sharp, cutting through the pretense like a blade. "And I think we both know this interaction stopped being about a traffic violation a long time ago." Vaughn opened his mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. For the first time, he looked uncertain, like he wasn't entirely sure how to proceed. The balance of power was shifting, and for the first time, Vaughn was on shaky ground.